The experience of loving an avoidant attachment style represents one of the most psychologically devastating relationship dynamics in human connection, where your deepest expressions of love are systematically weaponized against you through sophisticated defensive strategies designed to neutralize emotional intimacy. This psychological warfare operates through what can only be described as an avoidant knockout, a systematic dismantling of your emotional investment through calculated resistance, strategic withdrawal, and active sabotage of the very love you offer. Understanding the brutal reality of this dynamic reveals how avoidance unconsciously transform loving relationships into battlegrounds where your affection becomes the enemy to be defeated rather than the gift to be received. Their fight against your love operates through multiple interconnected defense systems that work together to ensure that no amount of care, devotion, or emotional investment can penetrate their protective barriers while simultaneously punishing you for attempting such penetration. The love as threat detection system. Avoidant individuals possess sophisticated psychological radar systems that identify expressions of love and emotional investment as existential threats requiring immediate neutralization. This detection system operates automatically below conscious awareness, transforming your most caring gestures into perceived attacks on their autonomy and emotional safety that must be defended against through increasingly aggressive countermeasures. Their love detection begins with hypervigilance toward emotional expressions that indicate deepening attachment or increasing emotional investment from their partners. They develop acute sensitivity to verbal affirmations, physical affection, future planning discussions, and supportive behaviors that suggest their partner is developing stronger feelings or commitment expectations. This hypervigilance transforms normal relationship progression into a series of threat assessments. The avoidance threat detection system includes analysis of gift giving, special gestures, and thoughtful behaviors that demonstrate their partner's growing emotional investment. Rather than experiencing these expressions as pleasant surprises or evidence of care, they interpret them as evidence of increasing emotional obligation and relationship pressure that threatens their independence and emotional autonomy. Their detection mechanisms extend to monitoring changes in their partner's communication patterns, availability, and emotional expression that indicate developing attachment intensity. They become expert at recognizing when partners are falling deeper in love and immediately begin implementing defensive strategies to prevent this love from creating expectations or obligations they cannot fulfill. The avoidance love as threat system also involves interpreting their partner's emotional needs and requests for intimacy as attempts to control or manipulate them into providing emotional availability they are not prepared to offer. This interpretation transforms normal relationship requests into perceived attacks that require defensive responses rather than loving accommodation. The emotional deflection arsenal. When confronted with expressions of love and emotional intimacy, avoidants deploy sophisticated deflection strategies designed to redirect, minimize, or neutralize these expressions without explicitly rejecting them. This deflection arsenal allows them to avoid the guilt of obvious rejection while still preventing emotional intimacy from developing beyond their comfort zones. Their emotional deflection begins with humor and sarcasm deployed strategically to transform serious emotional moments into casual exchanges that reduce intimacy pressure. They master the art of using comedy to deflect emotional weight while appearing good-natured and fun, rather than deliberately avoidant or cruel in their deflection attempts. The avoidance deflection arsenal includes intellectual analysis and psychological interpretation of their partner's emotional expressions that transforms feelings into abstract concepts, requiring discussion rather than emotional response. They redirect emotional conversations into analytical discussions about relationship dynamics, attachment theory, or psychological patterns that avoid authentic emotional engagement. Their deflection strategies extend to rapid subject changes and attention redirection that prevents emotional conversations from developing momentum or depth. They become skilled at identifying precisely when emotional intensity reaches levels that require intervention and implementing smooth transitions that derail intimacy without appearing deliberately obstructive. The avoidance emotional deflection also involves activity initiation and environmental manipulation that makes sustained emotional conversation impossible. They suggest physical activities, invite interruptions, or create environmental distractions that naturally end emotional discussions while appearing spontaneous rather than calculated. The intimacy sabotage mechanisms. Avoidance develops sophisticated sabotage mechanisms that systematically undermine intimate moments and emotional connection attempts without appearing deliberately destructive. These sabotage strategies operate through subtle interference with emotional bonding while maintaining plausible deniability about their intentional nature. Their intimacy sabotage begins with timing manipulation that ensures emotional conversations or intimate moments occur during suboptimal conditions that prevent meaningful connection. They unconsciously arrange for intimacy attempts to happen when they are tired, distracted, stressed, or otherwise unable to provide authentic emotional presence. The avoidance sabotage mechanisms include mood disruption strategies that create emotional discord before or during intimate moments that makes emotional connection impossible. They may initiate conflicts, bring up stressful topics, or create tension that transforms potential bonding experiences into relationship conflicts requiring resolution rather than intimacy. Their sabotage extends to physical positioning and environmental control that prevents emotional intimacy from developing naturally. They position themselves physically to avoid eye contact, create physical barriers, or engage in multitasking during conversations that prevents the focused attention necessary for emotional connection and bonding. The avoidance intimacy sabotage also involves vulnerability, interruption, where they systematically prevent their partner's emotional disclosure or their own emotional expression from reaching levels that create genuine intimacy. They interrupt vulnerable moments with practical concerns, emotional deflection, or attention redirection that prevents emotional depth from developing. The punishment through withdrawal system. When their defensive strategies fail to prevent emotional intimacy or expressions of love, avoidants implement punishment systems that discourage future attempts at emotional connection through strategic withdrawal and emotional unavailability. These punishment mechanisms operate through negative reinforcement that teaches partners to avoid expressions of love and emotional need. Their punishment system begins with immediate emotional withdrawal, following expressions of love or requests for intimacy that signals disapproval and creates negative associations with emotional expression. This withdrawal can be subtle or dramatic, but consistently communicates that emotional expression results in loss of connection and availability. The avoidance withdrawal punishment includes communication reduction and responsiveness decreases that make their partners feel ignored and unimportant following attempts at emotional connection. They may become less talkative, less physically affectionate, or less emotionally available for days or weeks following intimate moments or love declarations. Their punishment mechanisms extend to activity withdrawal, where they become less willing to engage in shared activities, spend quality time together, or participate in relationship experiences following emotional intimacy attempts. This activity reduction punishes their partner's emotional investment while creating relationship distance that protects their emotional autonomy. The avoidance punishment system also involves mood changes and attitude shifts that create emotional atmospheres of disappointment, irritation, or displeasure following expressions of love or emotional need. These mood changes communicate that emotional expression creates relationship problems rather than relationship enhancement. The love minimization strategies. Avoidance employs systematic strategies for minimizing and devaluing their partner's expressions of love to reduce the emotional impact and obligation these expressions might create. These minimization techniques allow them to acknowledge their partner's feelings while preventing these feelings from affecting their behavior or creating relationship expectations. Their love minimization begins with qualification and condition attachment that reduces the significance of love declarations by suggesting they are temporary, situational, or based on incomplete information. They may respond to "I love you" with qualifiers about how love changes over time or suggestions that their partner doesn't truly know them well enough for genuine love. The avoidance minimization strategies include comparison reduction, where they diminish their partner's expressions by comparing them unfavorably to other relationships, suggesting their partner hasn't experienced real love, or implying that their current feelings are less significant than they believe them to be. Their minimization extends to timing dismissal, where they suggest their partner's expressions of love are premature, inappropriate for their relationship stage, or evidence of emotional instability rather than genuine feeling. This timing criticism makes love expression appear pathological rather than natural relationship development. The avoidance love minimization also involves emotional capability questioning, where they suggest their partner's love is based on need, insecurity, or emotional dependency, rather than genuine appreciation and attraction. This reframing transforms love into psychological weakness that requires addressing, rather than celebration and reciprocation. The reciprocity avoidance mechanisms. When faced with expressions of love and emotional investment, avoidance implements sophisticated mechanisms for avoiding reciprocal emotional expression that might create relationship bonds or commitment expectations. These avoidance mechanisms allow them to receive love while preventing the emotional equality that characterizes intimate partnerships. Their reciprocity avoidance begins with deflection responses that acknowledge their partner's expressions without providing equivalent emotional disclosure. They may respond to "I love you" with "thank you," "that's sweet," or "I care about you too," without matching the emotional intensity or commitment level of their partner's expression. The avoidance mechanisms include delay tactics that postpone reciprocal expressions until emotional moments have passed and reciprocity no longer carries the same bonding significance. They may eventually express love, but only after the immediate intimacy opportunity has been lost and their expression cannot create immediate emotional connection. Their reciprocity avoidance extends to qualification attachment, where any emotional expressions they do provide are heavily qualified with conditions, limitations, or disclaimers that reduce their bonding impact. They might say, "I love you too," but followed by limitations that prevent their expression from creating relationship security or progression. The avoidance mechanisms also involve emotional expression, substitution, where they provide alternative forms of care that avoid direct emotional vulnerability while appearing loving and engaged. They may offer practical help, physical affection, or quality time while avoiding verbal expressions of emotion that might create commitment implications. The emotional labor rejection system. Avoidance systematically reject opportunities to provide emotional labor and support that would deepen relationship bonds while demonstrating their care and investment. This rejection system operates through various strategies that avoid emotional responsibility while maintaining their position as cared for rather than caregiving partners. Their emotional labor rejection begins with competency dismissal, where they claim lack of skill or knowledge in providing emotional support that excuses them from offering care during their partner's difficult periods. They position themselves as emotionally incompetent rather than unwilling to provide support that might create deeper relationship bonds. The avoidance rejection system includes overwhelm claims, where they suggest their own emotional state or life circumstances prevent them from providing support during precisely the moments when their partner most needs emotional care. This overwhelm positioning makes their unavailability appear circumstantial rather than deliberately avoidant. Their labor rejection extends to problem-solving redirection, where they respond to emotional needs with practical solutions rather than emotional support that avoids the intimacy created through emotional caregiving. They offer advice, solutions, or resources while avoiding the emotional presence that creates bonding through shared vulnerability. The avoidance rejection system also involves deflection to professional or alternative sources, where they suggest their partner seek emotional support from therapists, friends, or family members, rather than expecting emotional care from their romantic relationship. This deflection normalizes emotional distance while appearing concerned about their partner's well-being. The future planning resistance framework. Avoidants develop comprehensive resistance frameworks that prevent future planning discussions and commitment conversations that might transform their relationship from casual to serious. This resistance operates through various strategies that avoid concrete planning while maintaining relationship participation and partner investment. Their future planning resistance begins with premature timing claims, where they consistently suggest that future planning discussions are happening too early in the relationship, regardless of how long they have been together. This timing resistance allows indefinite postponement of commitment conversations while appearing reasonable and measured. The avoidance resistance framework includes uncertainty emphasis, where they focus on unknowable future variables that make planning appear impossible or unwise. They highlight potential career changes, life developments, or external factors that justify avoiding concrete relationship planning while appearing practically minded rather than commitment avoidant. Their planning resistance extends to independence preservation arguments, where they frame future planning as threats to personal autonomy and individual development that healthy relationships should not require. This independence framing makes commitment planning appear controlling rather than natural relationship progression. The avoidance resistance framework also involves alternative relationship models, where they propose arrangements that provide some future security without traditional commitment structures. They might suggest open relationships, living apart together, or undefined exclusive arrangements that avoid conventional commitment while appearing progressive and thoughtful. The conflict, creation, and escalation tactics. When other defensive strategies prove insufficient for maintaining emotional distance, avoidance may escalate to conflict creation that disrupts relationship harmony and provides justification for withdrawal and emotional unavailability. These conflict tactics serve dual purposes of creating distance while appearing to be relationship problems rather than avoidance strategies. Their conflict creation begins with issue magnification, where minor relationship problems are transformed into major concerns that require extensive discussion and resolution efforts that prevent focus on emotional intimacy and relationship progression. These magnified conflicts consume relationship energy while avoiding deeper emotional work. The avoidance escalation tactics include criticism and fault finding that creates defensive responses from their partners that transform loving interactions into conflict resolution sessions. They identify partner flaws, relationship problems, or concerning patterns that shift relationship focus from love expression to problem solving and conflict management. Their conflict creation extends to boundary violation claims, where they interpret normal relationship expectations and emotional needs as attempts to control or manipulate them that justify defensive responses and relationship distance. These boundary claims transform their partner's love into evidence of relationship dysfunction requiring correction. The avoidance escalation tactics also involve past issue resurrection, where they bring up resolved conflicts or historical relationship problems during moments of intimacy or love expression that disrupts emotional connection while appearing to address legitimate relationship concerns that require discussion and resolution. The psychological gaslighting operations. Avoidants may engage in sophisticated psychological gaslighting that makes their partners question their own emotional reality and relationship perceptions. These gaslighting operations serve to destabilize their partner's confidence in their own emotional experience while positioning the avoidant as the rational, stable party in the relationship dynamic. Their gaslighting operations begin with emotional reality denial, where they suggest their partner's perceptions of emotional distance, avoidance, or rejection are inaccurate or exaggerated. They position themselves as loving and available while implying their partner's emotional needs or relationship concerns are evidence of personal instability or excessive neediness. The avoidance gaslighting includes memory manipulation, where they deny or reinterpret past interactions to minimize their own avoidant behaviors, while emphasizing their partner's emotional reactivity or relationship demands. This memory revision makes their partner doubt their own recollections, while positioning the avoidance version of events as more accurate and reliable. Their gaslighting operations extend to emotional interpretation control, where they tell their partner what they really feel or mean, rather than accepting their partner's emotional expression at face value. This interpretation control prevents their partner from trusting their own emotional experience while giving the avoidant power over relationship emotional reality. The avoidance gaslighting also involves sanity, questioning where they suggest their partner's emotional responses to avoidant behaviors are evidence of mental health problems, attachment issues, or psychological dysfunction that requires professional attention rather than relationship change or accommodation. The energy depletion strategy. Avoidants systematically implement strategies that deplete their partner's emotional energy and relationship investment capacity while maintaining their own emotional reserves. This energy depletion serves to reduce their partner's ability to pursue emotional intimacy while preventing them from demanding more emotional availability than the avoidant is prepared to provide. Their energy depletion begins with emotional labor imbalance, where they consistently receive more care, attention, and emotional support than they provide, while positioning this imbalance as natural relationship dynamics rather than deliberate avoidance strategies. This imbalance exhausts their partner while preserving their own emotional resources. The avoidance depletion strategy includes crisis creation, where they manufacture relationship problems, personal dramas, or external conflicts that require their partner's emotional attention and support while preventing focus on relationship intimacy or emotional development. These crises consume relationship energy while appearing to be legitimate life challenges. Their energy depletion extends to emotional availability, inconsistency, where they provide intermittent emotional connection that keeps their partner hoping for more while never providing sufficient emotional satisfaction to feel secure or fulfilled. This intermittent reinforcement creates addiction-like patterns that exhaust their partner while maintaining the avoidance control. The avoidance depletion strategy also involves support extraction, where they accept their partner's emotional care and practical assistance while providing minimal reciprocal support that creates one-sided relationships that drain their partner's resources while meeting their own needs without equivalent investment. The long-term psychological damage assessment. The cumulative effect of loving an avoidant and experiencing their systematic resistance to love creates profound psychological damage that extends far beyond the immediate relationship into their partner's future relationship, capacity, and mental health. Understanding this damage reveals the true cost of attempting to love someone who fights against emotional connection. The long-term damage begins with reality testing destruction, where partners begin doubting their own emotional perceptions, relationship needs, and love expression validity due to consistent invalidation and gaslighting from their avoidant partner. This reality confusion can persist long after the relationship ends. Their psychological damage includes self-worth erosion, where repeated rejection of love expressions and emotional needs creates internalized beliefs about being unworthy of love, too demanding, or fundamentally flawed in their relationship expectations and emotional requirements. The damage extends to future relationship capacity destruction, where partners develop anxiety about expressing love, requesting emotional support, or expecting reciprocal emotional investment due to conditioning that associates these normal relationship behaviors with rejection and conflict. Their long-term psychological damage also involves trust destruction, where partners lose faith in their ability to accurately assess potential partners' emotional availability and commitment capacity, leading to either avoidance of future relationships or repeated attraction to similarly avoidant partners who continue the cycle of emotional deprivation and psychological damage. Understanding the brutal reality of loving an avoidant reveals how their defensive strategies transform loving relationships into psychological warfare zones where care is weaponized against the caregiver. Recognition of these patterns provides crucial information for making informed decisions about relationship investment while protecting psychological well-being from the systematic demolition that characterizes the avoidant knockout experience.